From historic wards reserved for the criminally insane, where it's claimed restless spirits and much darker things roam after the sun goes down, to old tuberculosis sanatoriums plagued by phantom children and age-old curses. Are you ready for the most haunted hospitals in the United States? Number 5. OSF St. Francis Medical Center. OSF St. Francis Medical Center, located off Northeast Glen Oak Avenue in Peoria, Illinois, is a teaching hospital utilized by the University of Illinois College of Medicine that boasts the titles of being the largest hospital in the entirety of the metro, as well as the fourth largest in the state. Historically, an early hospital unit was established on site in 1876 by a group of Franciscan sisters who, in 1877, would form an independent religious community titled the Sisters of the Third Order of St. Francis, and whom, in 1878, would purchase a new plot with a freestanding structure, which they would fix up and reopen as a more apt medical facility. Through the late 19th and early 20th centuries, this hospital was expanded upon countless times, allowing for the accommodation of more patients, and from 2007 to 2010, it would welcome in its largest modernization and expansion project to date, allowing for essential growth in both adult and pediatric units. Today, OSF St. Francis remains under the charge of the sisters, and interestingly enough, is rated as first in Illinois for organ recovery. Over its years, a number of ghost stories surrounding this age structure have manifested, with staff and officials reporting extreme cold spots, orbs and odd flashes of light visible to the naked eye, disembodied footsteps and voices, and encounters with shadowy figures and a range of full-bodied apparitions, including those of old-timey doctors, nurses, and patients. One more popular story tells of how, in the 1800s, a sick man was dropped off anonymously at the hospital before, mid-care, disappearing on staff, prompting many to speculate that he was actually one of the site's countless entities. Lastly, two ghostly nuns have been known to appear aside the beds of sick patients before fading away mysteriously. Number 4. Norristown State Hospital. Norristown State Hospital, located off Starrigier Street in Norristown, is a long-term psychiatric care facility just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, that currently only accepts patients on a strict court-ordered basis. Historically, ground on site was first broken in 1878, with the construction of 7 separate wards and an administrative building launched over 265 acres. In 1879, the original complex was completed, and a year later, in 1880, this new facility would begin accepting patients. By the early 1930s, the hospital would become overcrowded, and in 1938, funds were set aside for the establishment of several additional structures in an effort to open up more beds while also reducing strain on staff. But by the 1970s, following the development of psychotropic medications, which allowed more patients to function at home, the site's population plummeted drastically. In 2018, the hospital's civil unit was closed down entirely, leaving only its forensics facility intended for criminally committed individuals. In the present, Norristown boasts 30 remaining buildings in varying states of decay, spread across a slightly reduced 225-acre campus, with Old Building 51 holding the forensic facility, other structures accommodating various social service providers or local government agencies, and others still lying vacant. Over the years, these old grounds have spawned more than a few tales of terror, with those frequenting the area reporting doors that open and close on their own, disembodied footsteps and knocking from empty spaces, orbs and strange lights visible to the naked eye, and encounters with the apparitions of patients, doctors, and nurses. Also reported across Norristown are disembodied voices, moans, and screams, and run-ins with the specter of a short, balding man in scrubs and a robe that's most often sighted on the first floor of Building 12, as well as within the tunnels below it. Lastly, and on that note, all buildings on site were originally connected by a network of tunnels, and in those that remain open, adventurers brave enough to explore about have described shadowy figures, extreme cold spots, scratching noises, and strange, pale, hominid creatures that stay just beyond the light. Number 3. St. Elizabeth's Hospital. St. Elizabeth's Hospital, located off Alabama Avenue Southeast in Washington, D.C., is a historic psychiatric hospital that boasts the title of being the first facility of its type to operate on a federal level within the United States. Historically, construction of the hospital was started in 1852. It would open its doors as the Government Hospital for the Insane in 1855, and through the Civil War, its grounds would actually serve as a makeshift medical unit to sick and wounded soldiers. During this time, portions used for this purpose were renamed as St. Elizabeth's, a title which stuck and was later officialized for the entirety of the campus in 1916. The hospital would hit a peak through the 1950s when, at one point, it held over 8,000 patients. But following movements for deinstitutionalization in 1969, St. Elizabeth's would establish the first community-based center for mental health, and numbers at the old hospital would decline rapidly. The site's West Campus was closed in as recently as 2002, and in 2006 it would be transformed into a headquarters for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, though portions of the East Campus continue to operate as a mental health facility to this day. Chillingly, but not surprising considering its history, this property is no stranger to violent deaths, most at the hands of primitive treatment options or outright neglect, and as such, a number of stories tell of its purported resulting hauntings, with department staff and visitors reporting footsteps heard from empty rooms, disembodied moans, screams, and whispers, extreme hot and cold spots, and encounters with apparitions of both patients and early doctors in garb spanning back to the 1800s. Some of the most popular fables associated with St. Elizabeth's surround the Blackburn Lab, which lies empty today and is the place at which neuropathologist Walter Freeman pioneered the lobotomy. Disturbingly, it's estimated Freeman lobotomized more than 3,500 individuals. And near his old workspace, many have described feeling as if they were being observed by someone unseen. The sensation of being touched or grabbed at by invisible hands, and even the feeling of phantom pains felt across the face or forehead that only seemingly dissipate once off the property. Number 2. Old Seaview Hospital. Old Seaview Hospital, located in the Willowbrook neighborhood on Staten Island in New York City, New York, is an aged tuberculosis sanatorium turned National Historic District that, while it was still in operation, was actually the largest and most costly municipal facility for TB in the U.S. Historically, the site was first established through the 1830s as the Richmond County Poor Farm, and later would welcome in a cholera hospital, an insane asylum, and housing for the poor. By 1902, the facility offered 16 buildings, including dorms, a dining and kitchen space, a morgue, and more, and would undergo a title change to the New York City Farm Colony. In 1913, Seaview Hospital would open its doors directly across the street from said farm. In 1915, both operations were merged, and the entirety of the area would take on the name Seaview Farm until 1921, when the merger was ended. The hospital and poor farm would continue to grow as separate entities until 1961, when, once again, they were merged, an alteration which would result in the transformation of several previously unused buildings. Sadly, through the 1970s, the campus was closed down, with the majority of its remaining structures shuttered and abandoned, and others transformed into various community and health centers over the many years. As legend has it, Old Seaview is haunted by the souls of those who passed through both the poor farm and hospital, and across campus in buildings being repurposed. Encounters with the apparitions of doctors, patients, and individuals in old-timey clothing are all but common. Many have told of faces that appear in windows and mirrors, of orbs and mists that float with seeming sentience, of odd flashes of light from vacant buildings, and of disembodied talking, coughing, crying, and footsteps from locked or empty spaces. And several informal investigations have yielded extreme temperature fluctuations, chilling EVPs, and instances of equipment going missing only to turn up later in strange places. Lastly, a number of reports detail the disembodied sounds of children playing or calling out to their parents, as well as accounts of their manifestations that appear so real it's caused those nearby to go chasing after them, and has even resulted in calls to the authorities. Number 1. Bryce Hospital. Bryce Hospital, located off Bryce Drive in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, is a historic medical complex boasting the impressive reputation of being the state's oldest and largest inpatient psychiatric facility of its type. Historically, construction of Bryce's original building was started in 1852, and when it finally opened in 1861, it would actually do so as the first structure with both gas lighting and central heating in the whole of Tuscaloosa. The facility would open its doors as the Alabama Insane Hospital, but was later renamed by its superintendent, Peter Bryce, who demanded all patients be treated with courtesy, equality, and respect, and above all, as human beings at all times. Through the 20th century, Bryce's population would skyrocket, but sadly, this would result in overcrowding, overworked staff, and reduced care standards. And by 1970, it harbored all of 5,200 patients in what were deemed as concentration camp-like conditions. Following strong public outcry, Bryce was reformed over the years, and in 2009, it was announced the hospital would be moving to a new facility, a transition which wouldn't be completed until 2014. Following the hospital's leave, the University of Alabama would acquire and set to work restoring many of its old structures, while others were left for demolition, construction and renovations that continue into the present. In total, this old campus holds 4 cemeteries, the earliest of which dates back to 1892, and it's suspected that numerous unmarked graves remain lost and forgotten, scattered about. Not surprisingly, over its formidable lifespan, a number of local legends surrounding intense paranormal activity at Bryce have surfaced, with staff, workmen, visitors, and others reporting extreme cold spots, chilling EVPs picked up in the backgrounds of phone calls, and the constant feeling of being watched or followed by someone or something unseen. Several witness accounts have told of the smell of rotting flesh or of cauterizations, and a handful of visions of the past, seeming glimpses of what life was like in the 19th century. Also reported across the campus are the phantom sounds of phones ringing, instances in which furniture is found rearranged in under impossible time frames, disembodied footsteps, and the shocking sensations of being touched, grabbed, hit, kicked, or even of having one's hair pulled by an unseen force. Lastly, the Jemison Center was once a segregated ward intended for African American patients from 1939 up until, shockingly, as recently as 1977, and those who have braved it have reported writing that materializes out of nowhere on the walls, extreme hot and cold spots, and otherworldly noises that seemingly emanate from below the floor. Taking into consideration its intensely dark history, and coupling it with a terrifying assortment of purported supernatural infestations and ghost stories, we felt Bryce was the perfect choice as the most haunted hospital in the United States. Thanks for tuning in for our list of some of the most haunted hospitals in the United States. If you enjoyed hearing our histories and ghost stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn notifications on. Throw us a like, and most importantly, share us with anyone you feel could use a good scare. We'll catch you all next time.